Hi guys and welcome back to the Mighty Blues. My name is of course Cameron and welcome back today to another live stream. It is the live game review, the final live game review of the 2021-2022 season. I apologise that this is on a Wednesday. I, much like I'm sure the rest of you, wanted to get this video out the way earlier on in the week, but I had a couple of things that come up that unfortunately I had to attend to and therefore had to put this one off. This will probably be the shortest game review of the season, to be perfectly honest with you, despite the game of football having the most goals in it, I think, in any Everton game this season, if I'm right in saying. But let's be honest, this was a game of football that none of us really wanted to watch. None of us really wanted to put ourselves through, especially, after what we gave out last Thursday at Goodison Park against Crystal Palace. The season was done and dusted then, and whilst I know, we needed to turn up and put a professional performance in, we could have done with ending the season on a high and giving ourselves a little bit more confidence, and I suppose making ourselves look a little bit better than what we actually did. Whilst all of that is needs to be taken into account, we also need to be, to take into account that this game of football meant absolutely nothing to any of us really. And I know some people will say, well, Cam, it did, because again, it was a heavy defeat and it further proves the problems at this football club, and it's not good enough, and just because the game had, nothing riding on it doesn't mean that it's good enough, etc, etc. And I agree that that's absolutely true, and don't get me wrong, there was periods on Sunday where I was a little bit frustrated, I was a little bit angry, I was a bit furious. Some of the defending for some of the goals we conceded was absolutely woeful, and I was, I tweeted it out, and a lot of people were saying, why are you even getting angry? The season ended on Thursday, just don't even watch this game, go and watch the City game, or the relegation battles, whatever. But I just can't help but feel that frustration and that anger and that disappointment when Everton aren't playing well, or when Everton are making silly mistakes, even though the game had absolutely nothing on it. And even though it was practically, as I said, a post-credit scene in what was a pretty a pretty stressful film, it still would have been nice to go out there and at least make a good account of ourselves. And listen, we were awful on Sunday. We were absolutely awful. There's absolutely no beating around the bush. It was shocking from practically the first minute until the last minute. Arsenal with a much better team. Even when we scored our goal, it was against the run of play, and nothing really changed in the game. And whilst yes, they had a controversial refereeing decision for their first goal, the penalty, which in my opinion was absolutely never ever a penalty, especially not if Rodgers was not a penalty, which I'm happy to concede now it wasn't a penalty given what's happened over the last 48 hours or so. But no, it was never ever a penalty. But even with that, this isn't a game where I'm going to sit here and say a refereeing decision changed the game, because okay, they got the penalty and they ended up scoring, it was 1-1, and that just shows the inconsistencies and the sheer just dreadfulness of the that's not even a word, but I'm going to make it a word, dreadfulness of the refereeing and the officials in this country. But even without that decision, Arsenal was still looking much the more threatening team. Arsenal was still getting forward, they were still playing around us, it was still far too easy for them. And as I said, it was practically it was practically a day out for those Everton players, and it was practically a training session for those Arsenal players. And it reminded me a little bit, of Manchester City away from home on the last day of the season prior, when we lost, I think, 5-0 there, and it was Sergio Aguero's leaving party, and we effectively were just the entertainment that turned up, got absolutely bullied on the pitch, and then left. And it was pretty similar, I suppose, on Sunday against Arsenal, although I think any sort of frustration and upset and anger that I think most Evertonians had from that game and the goals that we conceded and the way in which we performed was completely outweighed by the sheer relief that we were all still feeling from Thursday night. I still now, to this day, am feeling relief from Thursday night. I've just gone on one of my apps on my phone, I won't tell you which one, but one of the things on it said something along the lines of I'll be happy when, or I'll be relieved when, and it was just Everton stay up. And I've just looked at it then, and it just hit me straight away that fucking hell, we were in a desperate situation this time last week, and Thursday took a lot out of all of us, and there was a lot of Blues that I spoke to who were very much just like not even interested in Arsenal. There was a lot of Blues that wouldn't have even watched the game on Sunday because they'll have been watching City's game, or Burnley, Leeds, whoever it may be. But I did watch the game because I chose to, because that's what I'm here for. I'm here to watch the games, and we're here to review them. And whilst this mightn't be a particularly long review, and whilst we mightn't talk particularly a lot about the game because of its lack of any real sort of importance, we've got a duty to sit here and do that. And as I said, I do apologise for the last couple of days. I've been a little bit busy. We will still be having all of the regular videos going up over the next few days or so. We'll be uploading a news video tomorrow. We're going to talk about the Player of the Season awards. Jordan Pickford winning Everton's Player of the Season for this year. Anthony Gordon winning Players Player and Young Player. And Vitaly Mikalenko winning Goal of the Season. And we're also going to talk a little bit about some transfer rumours. Everton have been linked with a couple of players over the last 24 hours or so. Conor Gallagher namely being one of them. I would be absolutely over the moon if we could sign Conor Gallagher, but I highly doubt that we will sign Conor Gallagher. But we're going to do all of that tomorrow, and then leading into Friday, we'll do the seasonal player ratings, and then next week we'll go in and we'll do a full season review, and we'll talk about the season as a whole and just how much of a shamble it's been, where it went wrong, where it went right, if we can pick anywhere where it went right. And all of that content will be coming over the next few days or so, but I thought we'll get this one out the way first, and then we can actually start to look forward to the summer and pick into bits what needs to change at Everton Football Club, because there is a lot that needs to change at Everton Football Club. And if anything, that performance really showed it. You know, we've had a lot of performances in recent weeks that I think maybe have tricked our brains into believing that, you know, certain players are good enough to be at this football club, or certain people on the board know what they're doing or know how to run the football club and this, that and the other. And in reality, the last 5-6 years, and certainly the last 6 to 8 months prior to, you know, the game against Manchester United, shall we say, the last 6 to 8 months before that, barring Newcastle at home and Arsenal at home, we've been in absolute shambles, and the players have been in absolute shambles, and the running of the club has been in absolute shambles, and Frank Lampard has had an absolutely gigantic job on his hands. And I find it really funny the way you see some opposition fans saying, "Oh, Frank's taken them from 16th to 16th," and all of a sudden people are saying he's done a great job. He has done a great job, because when we were 16th, we were dropping, and we were dropping dramatically, and we even dropped into the relegation zone. It wasn't a stable 16th, and he's taken us to a stable 16th. It was an unstable 16th, dropping, and he's managed to stabilise us and keep us afloat in the Premier League. And that wouldn't have been the case if it wasn't for certain players standing up and working and giving much more than what they'd given previously, i.e. your Alex Iwobi's, players like Richarlison, Jordan Pickford, Anthony Gordon, who have saved our arse on numerous occasions. If it wasn't for the fans turning up and taking this situation into our own hands. When have you ever seen, and you can sit there and you can talk about pitch invasions, or you're like, they never won, not only pitch invaded, or, you know, I don't know what you're talking about. I've had Liverpool fans say to me, yeah, but you weren't the first to do it. We do it before European games. It's not what we were doing. It wasn't the greeting of the coach. It wasn't the smoke before the game. It wasn't the, the atmosphere in the stadium. It wasn't the pitch invasion at the end. It was the significance of all of those things. When have you ever seen another team, witness another set of fans, another fan base witness their team in absolute freefall, heading nosediving towards relegation seeming an inevitability, at one point in the season, and then for not every Evertonian, but a lot of the Evertonians that can, to stand round and go, it took a few groups to say this isn't good enough and we're going to arrange something, and then everybody else went, yeah, that's a belter, that, we'll get behind that, and we single-handedly, and Frank Lampard and the players have mentioned this, so this isn't just me saying it because I was a part of it. The players and the manager have acknowledged this, and as has members of the board. A fan base single-handedly dragged their team out of the relegation battle, dragged their team out of this, almost forced their players into understanding what it means to play for this football club, thus forcing them to give that extra 10-15% on the pitch. When have you ever seen that before? I'm not saying we were the first people to greet a coach before the game. I'm not saying we've been the first people to pitch invade when something's gone right or whatever. I'm saying, when have you ever seen a set of fans who have single-handedly dragged their football club out of the situation like we have? Because we absolutely have. And the fact that we had to do that just shows how bad of a position and how bad of a situation that we were in. And this game, for me, just signified the end of what has been an absolute torrid season. Now, okay, you could say, well, Thursday was the end, and Thursday very much was the end for a lot of us, because that was when we were guaranteed safety, and let's be honest, none of us really gave a fuck after that point. We just wanted the season over. Arsenal was just a case of get through these 90 minutes and then move on. You saw the away end was absolutely booming, even when we conceded the 5th goal. I'm not really sure why the away end decided to cheer, but it did, and you know what, I'm not complaining about it in any way, shape or form. But yeah, as I said, we should never, ever, ever have been in this position, in this situation in the first place, for that to have been a thing. But we were, and that was the reality of it. And we as Evertonians almost saw it happening before our eyes and went, nah, you can get a fuck if you think, wait, this is happening on our watch. And we dragged these players out of this situation. And this is why, as the title of the live stream reads, as I think is a really, really apt point, this is only the start of the hard work for Frank Lampard. The last 4 months of Frank Lampard's Everton career may well be the hardest 3 or 4 months he's ever endured, be it as a player or a manager. Certainly as a manager, but maybe even as a player as well. Has Frank Lampard ever been in the position that he was in, to have to fight relegation, to have to unify a fan base that was once, as I said, so divided? I said this in the instant match reaction and I stick by it. For people saying, what did Frank Lampard do? He took Everton from 16th to 16th. What did he do? Well, firstly, on a very base statistic level, he won more points than Rafa Benitez did this season. So on a very statistic level, considering he took over at a dire time when, as I said, we were in free fall, he still managed to win more points than the previous fella did. But also, he united the fan base that was the most divided it has ever been. I said when Rafa Benitez left this football club, or when he was at this football club just before he left, that this is the most divided I've ever seen Evertonians fighting in stands. We do these live streams and people will be screaming and shouting at each other in the live comments. Everybody just hated Everton. Everybody hated Everton. Everybody hated going to the game. Everybody hated talking about Everton. Everybody hated watching Everton. Any distraction you could get from Everton, you got. And then whilst the last 4, 5, 6 weeks under Frank Lampard have been very, very difficult and very stressful, there hasn't been that not wanting to go to the game. There hasn't been that, oh, I can't be arsed. There hasn't been that, oh, Everton again. It's almost been a, no, we are Everton, and we'll drag this football club, even through defeats, even through Watford away, which was shocking, even through Brentford at home, which wasn't very good, even through Tottenham away. There was a little bit of hostility and stuff, but the overall thought was, we need to get behind this club, we need to get behind these players, or we're going to be playing Championship football next season. And Frank Lampard, as I said, has come in, and along with the fans, don't get me wrong, I think the fans deserve the most credit, but Frank Lampard has steered this movement of unity at the football club. It started from the fans. It started, Frank Lampard didn't say, come down before the game and greet us in the coach, or greet us at Finch Farm, or, run on the pitch if we win this game. Frank Lampard didn't say any of that. It's come from the fans, but Frank Lampard has steered it in the right direction. He's steered this ship of unity, and he's managed to unify a fan base that was the most divided it has ever been. And yet, still, that wasn't the hard bit for Frank Lampard. The hard work starts now. The hard work is getting rid of 7, 8, 9 players in this team that aren't good enough, and that's another video we're going to do over the next coming days or so. Probably within the next week we're going to do a keep and sell video, and there'll be a couple of names in there that you might be surprised at, and there'll be a couple of names in there that you won't be surprised at, but we're going to go through the entire team and talk about who I would want to keep and who I would want to sell. But that's Frank Lampard's job with Kevin Thelwell now. Frank Lampard's got to continue to have that relationship with the fans. He's got to continue to listen to the fans. He's got to continue to understand what the fans want, and he's got to vocalise that to the board. Now, I know this is difficult because ultimately the board, Bill Kenwright, Farhad Moshiri, aren't very liked by Evertonians at the moment. There's been an article released today to say that Farhad Moshiri will continue to be in control of certain decisions in regards to the future and transfers and stuff, and I put on our Twitter and I stick with it. If the longer Farhad Moshiri is making decisions at this football club, the worse the situation we're in will get. The situation will not get better whilst Farhad Moshiri is making these decisions. I'm not saying he absolutely needs to sell, but he needs to understand that he hasn't got a fucking clue about football, and until he understands that, this situation is only going to get worse. But Frank Lampard's got to somehow, even though it's difficult because they're his employers and he doesn't want to upset them, and I'm sure he's got a good relationship with the owner and the chairman and stuff, he's got to somehow be able to understand the fans' views and opinions and try and vocalise that to the board for changes to be made. As I said, he's got to make vast changes within this squad along with Kevin Thelwell. Players that are out of contract, gone, and will be gone and won't be offered new contracts. We've already seen Cenk Tosun put an Instagram picture up about leaving the football club. And players that there will need to be tough decisions on. As I said, I'm not going to go in great detail on them now because we'll do another video on that over the next couple of days. But there's been players that have done relatively well recently. And by relatively well, I mean significantly better than they had done previously. However, that doesn't mean that they should be guaranteed to stay at this football club. If a bid was to come in for them, I'd sell them tomorrow. Yes, they've worked hard and they've picked themselves up. And you could say, well, do they deserve a second chance under Frank Lampard? We're talking about the same players that have had 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th chances under different managers. You know, how long can you keep giving these people chances? Even though they might have worked hard and picked themselves up and you know, improved significantly over the last 4 or 5 weeks. If a good enough bid comes in, then, you know, I think we should be prepared to sell on a number of players. And that might shock some people, but as I said, we'll go through that, and that's a different topic for a different day. The Farhad Moshiri thing is baffling. I put it on Twitter yesterday. I was sitting there in work yesterday morning. My dad said to me about Jean-Philippe Gbamin and, you know, the time that he spent on the pitch as an Everton player. And it just hit me that I've spent more time on the pitch at Goodison this season than Anwar El Ghazi. Anwar El Ghazi was brought in by Farhad Moshiri, and we were told he was brought in because he was a good member of the squad. He was going to offer something to the team. He was going to offer us a new dynamic, something different that we haven't seen before. He played 14 minutes this season or something like that. 14 minutes this season or something he played. The kid who bloody zip-tied himself to the post had been on the pitch longer than Anwar El Ghazi. And yet that was a decision that we were supposed to be believed was made because he was going to improve the team. Well, 2 managers, Frank Lampard included, not even didn't even deem him good enough to improve the team. They didn't even deem him good enough to be on the bench for most games. He hasn't even made the squad for the last 5, 6, 7 weeks, whatever it is. So that is, again, another decision made by the owner that just shows why he shouldn't be making footballing decisions. But he's the owner, you know. What can we do? He makes the decisions, and ultimately, you know, we can sit here and say we don't want him to. We can sit here and say he's not good enough to. But if he wants to, he will, because he owns the football club. But the reality is, as I said, the hard work really starts now for Frank Lampard. You know, this is where he's got to work hard. This is where he's got to make some tough decisions. This is where he's got to ultimately try and change this squad around enough to guarantee safety again next season and to hopefully be pushing for something, because players like Conor Gallagher, who have been linked with, players like Brennan Johnson, who, you know, we're hearing, you know, talks about, they're not going to want to go to a Premier League club if we're in the situation that Everton were in last season without guarantees. Now, I know we've got Frank Lampard and he's, you know, one of the best, if not the best English midfielder of all time, and I know that will come with its perks, but those players will have other Premier League clubs. Certainly Conor Gallagher, because of his season last season with Palace. They will have other Premier League clubs that are knocking on the door saying, come and play for us. Now, the Frank Lampard effect won't be worth much if those players and their agents are looking at Everton and thinking they're in free fall. Don't be surprised if they're back down there again next season. And that's why Frank has got a really, along with Kevin Thelwell, really difficult couple of months coming up. And this is where the hard work starts now, on chipping through this team, getting rid of the dead wood, getting rid of the phonies who can pretend to play well one week but actually are shit, and bringing in some real top quality players who are willing to work, players with the attitude and the application of Anthony Gordon, of Richarlison, of Jordan Pickford, of Dominic Calvert-Lewin, who I actually think has come under a lot of unnecessary stick this season. And I'm not just saying that because of his Instagram post the other day, but you know, you can clearly tell Dom's had a difficult season personally in terms of his injuries, and obviously with what he put on Instagram in his personal life as well. You know, ultimately Dominic Calvert-Lewin has just put himself in the history books of Everton Football Club forever. He scored the goal that has kept us up, and I know in hindsight we would have stayed up anyway given the results on Sunday, but you know, we don't know that, do we? Had there have been a free horse race, it might have ended differently on Sunday. So yeah, again, those are the players that I'd be looking to build the team. And that's not me saying I wouldn't sell Dom if a big enough bid come in. I don't think there's any one of them in that team I wouldn't sell if a big enough bid come in because of the financial situation that we're in. I don't think we're in a position to look at any of them and say, oh, we wouldn't sell. I'd love to sit here and say, I don't think we'll sell Richarlison, but if a big enough bid come in and he ultimately wanted to leave, then I think we wouldn't really have much of a leg to stand on with it. But yeah, as I said, this is all topics for a different video. This is topics for the season review. This is topics for, what Frank Lampard should do next. This is topics for the keep and sell video. Let's talk a little bit about Sunday. I know none of us want to talk about it. I know ultimately we've probably all forgotten about it, and I wish I could have forgotten about it if it wasn't for the continuity of having a season review. Then I wouldn't have done this. The game review, then I wouldn't have done this video, but here we are. It was just a shambles, wasn't it? Really, it was just a shambles. It was a game that I think Frank Lampard from the offset almost sort of said we're not really that interested in. You looked at the team that he put out. It included the likes of John Joe Kenny, Jared Branthwaite was back in there, of course. No Richarlison in the squad. Apparently he had a slight injury. No Jordan Pickford in the squad. Asmir Begovic was in goal. Obviously, we had Abdoulaye Doucouré in there, which was a little bit of a shock. I felt Abdoulaye Doucouré should have maybe been given a rest, considering there was nothing playing on this game. Donny van de Beek back on the bench. Tom Davies was in there for his first start in some time. And yeah, it was just that it was a game. The game went exactly how I expected the game to go. And that might sound, a little bit strange in saying, but it went exactly how I expected it to go. There wasn't one part of the game where I was shocked by. We made a bang average Arsenal team, an Arsenal team that had lost 2 games on the bounce, an Arsenal team that had been wiped, that had the floor wiped off them, an Arsenal team that Newcastle wiped the floor with is basically what I'm trying to say. The week before, we made them look unbelievable. Now, Arsenal had something to fight for, but the entirety of the Emirates knew after about 20 minutes that what they were fighting for was out of reach. I don't think there'll have been many Arsenal fans that have been going into that game on Sunday believing that Norwich would get something against Tottenham. And they certainly weren't going to believe it after 15 minutes when Tottenham were 2 or 3-0 up, something like that. So at that point, it just become almost like a look good for Arsenal. Come out the season, finish it strong, look good, and then hopefully, I think Mikel Arteta was probably thinking that would give him maybe a little bit more leeway with that with Arsenal fans because they've looked good on the last day. For Everton and for Frank Lampard, it very much seemed like a turn up, go out there, run around for a bit. I'm not saying they weren't arsed. I don't really think that there was a lack of effort. I don't really think there was a lack of application or a lack of desire. I just think there was a lack of any real sort of energy, but not in the sense of that they weren't arsed, just in the sense of that every single player looked drained because of what had been given on Thursday. Anthony Gordon obviously got a rest, which was much needed as well, but every other one of them just looked drained of any form of energy that they had because of everything that they'd given on Thursday night. And to be honest, I think the Evertonians that were down at the Emirates and watching at home were very much drained of any energy that we had. It just looked like as I said, it was a typical we've got nothing to play for last day of the season performance, just get through it. But whereas typically you'd look at those performances and think that's frustrated me, because why couldn't we have just ended the season strongly? Why couldn't we have just given a bit more or worked a bit hard or forced them into making mistakes? But with this one, I think it was a bit different because we were all just thinking, listen, I was just glad that we weren't in a relegation battle on Sunday. I'm just glad that we were able to sit through that game without any real stress of the implications of it, because it had no implications whatsoever. And I think that was the thought of a lot of Evertonians and the feeling of a lot of Evertonians on Sunday night. And as I said, it is frustrating, and I had to train myself out of the frustration. And if you're wondering what I mean by that, I had to say to myself a couple of times, this game means nothing, and we aren't going to get relegated. And because when you see it, I don't care what anybody says. I don't think there would have been any blue that was watching that was particularly happy. I'm not saying there wasn't any blues that weren't arsed, because there have been a lot of blues that weren't arsed, but the blues that weren't arsed probably just turned it off and went and watched another game, probably Man City or somebody like that. But if you were a blue and you watched through 90 minutes of that, please don't tell me that you were just sitting there going, I don't care that we're this bad. Maybe you were because of how important Thursday was, but there was just a couple of things that really, really frustrated me. But then I had to keep telling myself, listen, it means nothing. We're safe. Just ignore it and get through it. And I suppose that was almost what the players were doing as well. You saw Frank Lampard smiling and hugging all of the players after the game and going over to the away end and stuff. And, as I said, it was a very much a post-credit game of football, which we didn't really need to have. Nobody really wanted to watch. We did anyway, because that's what we do. But it really meant nothing, which is exactly what every post-credit scene in any film has ever been for the history of films. And yeah, as I said, they started really, really brightly within the opening 5 or 10 minutes. You could tell it was going to be... It was, for me, it was almost like a carbon copy of the game against Manchester City. Now, last season, you sort of accepted it because it was Manchester City. They were the champions. They're absolutely unbelievable. They're a great footballing team, etc., etc. This season, you sort of accepted it because we were already safe. We'd had Thursday only a couple of days before. That was such an important night. But in all honesty... we can't keep having these final games of the season where we're shipping 5 goals. Even if we've got nothing to play for, we've got to try and make a better account of ourselves, because we really, really didn't make a good account of ourselves on Sunday. It was really, really poor. As I said, from the opening 5 or 10 minutes, you could just tell that our game plan was to sit back and just stop them from scoring, and their game plan was to try and score as many goals as possible in the off chance that Tottenham were to slip up or drop a point or two or whatever. But Arsenal, as I said from the start, were just a better team. They were the more attacking team. They were the more aggressive team. They just looked like they were on their game, and we just looked like we weren't. And as I said, they're getting forward, they're creating chances. Jordan Pickford's forced into making a couple of saves. Defensively, we really, really couldn't deal with them. I think that game really, really showed that players like John Joe Kenny shouldn't get a new Everton contract. Players like Jared Branthwaite aren't ready to play in the Premier League. And we held on for 10 minutes. We were getting peppered. We were getting everything thrown at us, but we held on. And then they got a silly penalty. Now, look, listen, I'm sure, I know that on the season review, we will sit here and we will talk about referees, and we'll talk about the officials, and we'll talk about the level of officiating in this league, because it is an absolute fucking monstrosity, the level of officiating in this league. And we'll go into more detail on that when we do the season review, because it needs to be spoken about, because if it wasn't for the officials in this league, we could have been safer a long time ago, avoided a lot of stress and anxiety, and we could have just been given a fair chance at doing whatever. I'm not saying we'd have been any better this season, because, we were woeful this season for different reasons, but, with the City decision in all seriousness, the penalty at Anfield, the sending off against Brentford, decisions that just Newcastle, Alan sending off, John Joe Shelby's tackle at St James's Park, which was a blatant sending off, which wasn't given. We had the tackle on Anthony Gordon in the Brentford game, which wasn't given. We had in the Palace game, Jordan Ayew, which was just given a yellow card when it was a blatant red card. Decisions that could have potentially changed games that didn't. But this one was one of them. Let's be honest, because it was never a penalty. It hits his sleeve, and apparently, according to the same rule that denied Everton a penalty at Goodison against Manchester City, if it hits your sleeve, it doesn't count. Now, I find that a bit mad, because if a player's wearing long sleeve fucking tops, then it's always going to hit their fucking sleeve in it. So are they basically a goalkeeper then? So that's a bit mad. But anyway, it hits his sleeve, and it's given. Now, as I said, listen. Some people will say it's a penalty all day. If it's a penalty all day, the Rodsy one's a penalty all day. And if you're going to say, yeah, then that's fine. But it's given, and, I think Martinelli steps up. It was Iwobi who it struck. He does lean into it, to be fair, which I don't think helped him. But then again, Rodsy literally leaned into it and didn't get nothing, so there you go. Martinelli steps up, makes it 1-0. Again, we're 1-0 down now. How are we going to deal with this? Are we going to sit everyone behind the ball? Are we going to soak up the pressure for the next 10, 15 minutes? Are we going to be able to deal with this? Arsenal just continue doing what they're doing. We continue just holding on by the skin of our teeth. They make it 2-0, I think, Nketiah not long afterwards. And then we get a goal back. By this point, Donny van de Beek's come on for Decore because Decore was absolutely blown out of his arse, evidently blown out of his arse. Sorry about that, just put the replay on. And we bring on Donny van de Beek for his last appearance in an Everton shirt, and Donny manages to get a goal. Really, really well played by Dominic Calvert-Lewin. I think Don was one of the only players that put in a a really good performance on Sunday. I think he done really, really well. Held the ball up really well, took it in his feet, got it to the as I said, the right hand side, put it across, and Donny van de Beek stood on his own, and he makes it 2-1. And all of a sudden you're thinking, hang on, we've been awful here. We've been battered from pillar to post. Defensively, we've been shocking. It was a corner. I think the second one we conceded was a ball into the box in a corner. But yeah, we're going into half time, only 2-1. Can we use this momentum? Can we come out maybe the second half, be a bit more compact, be a bit more attacking, be a bit more aggressive and get at them? We didn't, did we? They come out the second half. It was very much more of the same. They scored another 3 corners, which is again another thing. You talk about the hard work starts now for Frank Lampard. It's not just off the pitch in terms of signings and getting rid of some of these players and sorting issues with the board or whatever, even though that's not his job. Also on the pitch, the hard work starts for Frank Lampard. Now, Frank said, and Frank, as much as I love Frank Lampard and I think he's brilliant and I think he's the right manager for Everton and everything about him as a human being is right for this football club. Maybe not everything about him, but everything in a footballing sense about him as a human being is right for this football club. He said when he come in, just after he come in, for now, it's not about styles. It's not about stylistically. It's not about how good we look. It's not about how well we play. It's about fighting and winning games of football. And we could all get behind that because it was. It wasn't about the way in which we played or attacking football or nice. It was about winning games of football and fighting. And we did. We fought. We battled. We won games of football. He's not going to get away with that through next season. He's not going to be able to say it's not about the stylistically. It's about winning games of football. It is still about winning games of football, of course. But you know what I mean. He's not going to have that. We're in 16th position with 5 games to go. We just need to fight. It's going to be a fresh start, same start as everybody else. He's going to have to implement his styles in there. He's going to have to implement the way in which he wants to play, and he's going to have to make sure that these players, or the players he's got at his disposal, can play the way in which he wants to play. Now, one of the big things Frank Lampard needs to work on in this summer with these Everton players, while there's very little international football, I know there's a couple of friendlies, but that's about it, is defending corners, because we are absolutely abysmal at defending corners. And I know there's been rumours over the last 24 hours, as I said, we'll talk about them tomorrow, about the likes of James Tarkowski, about the likes of Connor Cody, who have been linked with moves to Everton, centre-halves, leaders, defenders that could really, really make a difference. Whether or not any of them come off, we'll talk about tomorrow, as I said, but defending corners is something that we absolutely need as a must to be able to deal with, because it just simply hasn't been good enough this season, and that's something Frank Lampard has got to work on. But as I said, we conceded another 2-3 corners, and that was pretty much it, really. The game ended. Listen, I'm not going to sit here and go in on the specifics of the goals or the substitutions or what massively went wrong, because firstly, I don't think anybody's asked, and secondly, I think we're all just happy that this season is over with, to be perfectly honest with you, and I'm as happy as everybody else that this season is over with. I think there were a couple of players that come out of the Arsenal game with not too much to lose. Alex Iwobi being one of them, Dominic Calvert-Lewin being another. I think there was a couple of players that come out who shouldn't play for Everton again. Andre Gomez didn't play, but I think he should go this summer. I think there's massive question marks about Yerry Mina. There's still question marks about Michael Keane, Mason Holgate, even Alex Iwobi to a sense, who you could say will give Alex another chance because he's been fantastic recently, but a lot of people would argue is 3.5 dreadful years. Does a good 4 months make up for that? Good 3 months make up for that? If you got a decent bid for Alex Iwobi, would you sell him? There's an argument there. Plus, you're looking at your Jordan Pickford, your Richarlison, your Dominic Calvert-Lewin. Is one of them going to leave the football club? We don't know. We'll have to wait and see. But the reality of the situation is there's a lot of hard work for Frank Lampard to do now, and this game showed it. And we already knew that anyway. Don't get me wrong. It wasn't like it was nothing we didn't know. We already knew that anyway. But this game really, really emphasised the level of work that needs doing at this football club, and Frank has got it. Frank has got it all to do. And as I said, we can only hope that he does that. I don't think his substitutions were particularly bad. the other day. Van der Beek scored a goal on his final appearance, which is great to see. Gordon come on and ran round and worked hard, which is good to see as well. But yeah, it was the typical final game of the season, nothing riding on it performance, and we can all now forget about it, never have to think about it again, and look forward to the summer. As I said, we're going to be live tomorrow doing a rumours video. We're going to talk about the Player of the Season awards. We're going to talk about James Tarkowski. We're going to talk about Conor Gallagher, all of that sort of stuff, so look out for that one. We are going to leave it there. I did say it'd be short, but there's literally nothing much else to talk about in regards to this game of football, and it was fucking shite, let's be honest. If you have enjoyed this one, please do hit that like button. It does only take a second to be new to the channel. Don't forget to subscribe. If you're watching as a YouTube video, leave your comments down below. We'll get involved with as many of them as we can. If you watch live, I'm not going to be able to get involved in any of the live comments today, unfortunately, because I've literally got football in 20 minutes, so I've got to run and drive to football. But if you are watching live, massive thank you, and we'll get involved in the live comments deeply tomorrow. As I said, transfer rumour videos, season review, season player ratings, keep and sell video, it's all coming over the next few weeks or so. So thankfully this season, or that season, is done now. It's out the way. No more reviews or previews for that season other than the main one. We can put it beside us now, and I won't be talking much about this game in the season review, so we never have to talk about this game again. But anyway, big thank you all for watching. Leave a like if you enjoyed it, subscribe if you're new, and we'll see you soon on the Mighty Blues. Cheers for watching. See you after.